If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. The morning that changed everything. First plane hits North Tower. The morning sun cast long shadows across Manhattan as people hurried to work. Coffee shops buzzed with their usual energy. Office workers checked emails and planned meetings. Nobody knew that in moments, everything would change forever. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 slammed into floors 93 through 99 of the North Tower. The impact shook the ground for blocks. Windows shattered, steel twisted. Fire erupted from the gaping wound in the building's side. People on the streets stopped walking. They looked up at the burning tower with wide eyes. Some pulled out cameras. Others stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. The massive hole in the building leaked smoke and flames into the clear blue sky. Inside the tower, chaos erupted. Workers above the impact zone found themselves trapped. Stairwells filled with smoke. Elevators stopped working. People made desperate phone calls to loved ones. Their voices shook as they tried to explain something that made no sense. Emergency dispatchers received hundreds of calls at once. Fire trucks raced through the streets, their sirens wailing. Police officers ran toward the danger, while everyone else ran away. Paramedics set up triage areas on nearby sidewalks. Television crews arrived quickly. News anchors struggled to find words. They kept saying it might have been an accident, a terrible mistake. Maybe the pilot had a heart attack. Perhaps the plane's instruments failed. But something felt wrong about this explanation. The weather was perfect. The sky was clear. Commercial pilots trained for decades to handle emergencies. How could such a massive plane simply crash into one of the world's most visible buildings? People gathered around televisions in shops and restaurants. They watched the smoke pour from the tower. Some cried. Others stood silent. Everyone had the same question burning in their minds. How did this happen? The burning tower stood like a wounded giant against the Manhattan skyline. Papers fluttered from broken windows like confetti at a dark celebration. The smell of jet fuel and burning materials began to fill the air. First responders climbed the stairs inside the tower. They carried heavy equipment up floor after floor. Their radios crackled with urgent messages. Time was running out for people trapped above the flames. As the minutes passed, one thing became clear. This was no ordinary accident. The precision of the impact suggested something far more sinister. The plane had hit the building perfectly, creating maximum damage and chaos. The mystery had begun, and it was about to get much deeper. Evidence emerges: hijackings, coordination, and unfolding catastrophe. The second plane appeared like a dark shadow against the morning sky. At 9:03 a.m., 17 minutes after the first crash, United Airlines Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower. The world watched in horror as flames erupted from the building's side. In that terrible moment, everything changed. This was no accident, no pilot error. The truth hit like a cold wave across newsrooms and living rooms everywhere. Someone had planned this. Someone had turned passenger planes into weapons. Air traffic controllers stared at their screens in disbelief. 4 planes had gone silent within hours of each other. Radio calls went unanswered. Flight paths had changed without warning. The aircraft had simply vanished from normal contact, as if they had been swallowed by an invisible force. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. The fortress of American defense, built to withstand any attack, now burned with black smoke rising into the Virginia sky. Phone calls flooded emergency centers. Reports came in from everywhere at once. Meanwhile, passengers on United Flight 93 learned about the other crashes through desperate phone calls to their families. They realized their plane was part of something much larger and darker. In the skies over Pennsylvania, ordinary people made an extraordinary choice. They fought back. The plane crashed in a field near Shanksville at 10:03 a.m. Investigators would later piece together the final moments from phone records and voice recordings. The passengers had saved countless lives by preventing the plane from reaching its target. Back in New York, millions watched the impossible happen on live television. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower began to fall. Steel and concrete that had stood for decades crumbled in less than 10 seconds. The North Tower followed at 10:28 a.m. Emergency workers raced through clouds of dust and debris. They had never seen anything like this. Radio chatter filled with urgent voices trying to understand what had happened. How could 4 planes be taken over at the same time? Who could coordinate such an attack? In FBI offices across the country, phones rang without stopping. Agents pulled flight records, passenger lists, and security footage. Names began to appear. Patterns emerged from the chaos. The attackers had planned this for months, maybe years. The day that started with clear blue skies had become America's darkest hour. As rescue workers searched through the wreckage, investigators began asking the questions that would consume them for years to come. How did 19 men bring down the most powerful nation on Earth? Investigating the Enigma, the 9/11 Commission's findings and unanswered questions. In the quiet rooms where investigators gathered, something strange began to emerge. The 9/11 Commission had a massive job ahead. They needed to piece together what happened on that terrible day. But the more they dug, the more questions arose. The Commission collected thousands of documents. They spoke to hundreds of people. Each witness told their story, but the stories didn't always match. Some remembered things one way, others remembered them differently. The investigators found gaps where information should have been. Intelligence agencies had clues before the attacks. The FBI knew some of the hijackers were in the country. The CIA had tracked them overseas. Yet somehow, these pieces never came together. The agencies didn't talk to each other well enough. Critical warnings got lost in paperwork. Airport security failed in ways that seemed impossible. The hijackers passed through checkpoints with box cutters. Some were flagged by computer systems, but still allowed to board. Security cameras captured their faces, but nobody stopped them in time. The money trail led across the globe. Bank records showed wire transfers from foreign accounts. The attackers had funding from a network that reached into many countries, but some financial connections disappeared into shadows. Certain bank records vanished. Some sources refused to cooperate. When the Commission published their final report, it filled hundreds of pages. They explained the plot in great detail. They named the failures that allowed it to happen. New security measures followed. Agencies were reorganized. Policies changed forever. But something felt incomplete to many people. Classified pages were kept secret for years. Some witnesses claimed they weren't allowed to tell their full stories. Engineers questioned how the buildings fell so fast. Pilots wondered about the flight patterns that day. The Commission said their investigation was thorough. Critics said too many questions remained open. Why were fighter jets so slow to respond? How did the hijackers navigate so precisely? What happened to all the phone calls that day? Some answers may never come. Files remain locked away in government vaults. Key witnesses have died. Physical evidence was destroyed or lost. The official story stands, but doubts linger in quiet conversations. The investigation changed how America thinks about security. It reshaped intelligence gathering. It built new walls between threats and citizens. Yet in the shadows of these changes, mysteries persist. Questions whisper in the margins of the official record, waiting for someone brave enough to ask them again.